you guys. I'm Carlos, and I'm here today with Reverend Emily Robnett, and we're going to hear all about her ministry and everything, the wonderful things that she's doing. But before we start in full with our conversation, I want to invite you to subscribe and like us. If you're seeing this on YouTube, please just like us and subscribe. If you are listening through Spotify or Apple, just also subscribe. And if you have anybody that may like or want to know more about what the conference is doing, what Emily is doing, please share it with everybody so that everybody can hear what the wonderful things that Emily is doing and what we trying to do and highlight at the conference level. So anyway, thank you, Emily, for being here today. And would you like to introduce the good people of Oklahoma, who you are? And the reason we are in Zoom is because we are the Ice Mageddon's coming upon us. All right. So that's the reason we are not in present together.
Mhm.
So anyway, would you please introduce yourself to the good people of the Oklahoma Annual Conference? I mean, I know that people know you, but just in case.
Yes, as you said, I'm Reverend Emily Robnett. I am an ordained elder in the Oklahoma United Methodist Church, and I am currently appointed as the campus minister at the University of Tulsa Wesley Foundation. I'm also married to a fellow clergy person. His name is Reverend Michael Robnett, and he's planting a church in Owasso called the Tapestry United Methodist Church. And we have two sons, Bram and Jorah, who are 4 and 2, which is kind of hard to wrap my mind around these days. And yeah, cute dog, some cats. That's who I am.
Awesome. Yes. And I love the name of your dog, Gimli, son of Loin. For
Guinea
those,
son of, I've been told that it actually should be son of Glowin from, yeah, from real fans, which apparently I am not. So, but yes, he's actually right here next to me. So,
I know, I love the name of your dog. So
mhm.
anyway, thank you for being here. I know that it is hard with children at home right now. As I said, that you have to do that, but thank you, I appreciate it, and thank you to your lovely husband as well. And we are also a clergy couple, so we understand what that looks like and what it feels like. So we understand that. Anyway, so going to the thing of the matter. We're celebrating on March the Women's International or Month or History Month of Women, and we want to highlight different women in ministry, different you know. Um, Groups of elders and deacons and more seasoned elders later on. So I want to ask kind of the same questions to all of you all. And I was wondering when you said, I feel like calling to be in ordained ministry, how that calling was received by your friends, by your family, by your local congregation. How that went for you.
So I was actually called to ministry as a senior in high school. I am from Ada, Oklahoma originally, and my pastor at the time was Reverend George Warren. Um, I love George. I had this kind of impromptu conversation with him one day as I was clocking out from working in the nursery, and he asked kind of, what do you want to do with your life? As if you should sort of know when you're 18. That's just what people do, I guess. Um, and I kind of hemmed and hawed, and I was like, well, I thought about being a nurse, and all I really know is that I want to help people. And he did this Jesus thing where he told a story about how a woman had come in that day and she needed help with her electricity had been shut off. She had small children, and he said, when she left that day, she had hope and she felt like her prayers had been answered. And so I'm just wondering if you have ever seen yourself as serving as a pastor. And I think I literally laughed in his face, because I had really only become a Christian in ninth grade, and here I was in 12th grade. I really hadn't read the Bible. So the concept in and of itself was absurd. And he just said, well, you know what? Just think about it. Just pray about it. And I left his office thinking, like, I'm never thinking about this again. Like, there's just no way that that is something I can do. And it never left my brain. And so by the time I graduated high school, that is kind of the direction I had decided I would go in. My mom, of course, was very supportive. She was attending First Methodist in Ada at the time. My dad is an atheist, so I think he didn't really know what to make of that. But he's always been supportive along the way. I don't know how much he understands about any of it, but he's proud and supports in the ways that he knows how. Um, I actually remember the first friend I told that I was considering this, and I chose the wrong person. And that will become apparent in a second when I explain why. Um, but he shall remain nameless, but we were in a coffee shop and I was telling him, I feel like called to ministry, and he was like the most devout Christian I knew at the time. And I just thought, this is somebody I should share this with. And he always carried a Bible. So he took out this battered Bible and he started reading to me from it. And he read from First Timothy and some other wonderfully cherry-picked verses. And when he sort of got to the end of sort of beating me with this scripture, he closes the Bible and he said, "Now, what do you think of that?" And I just was so speechless. I had no idea, like how to respond. And he said, he's like, "You should really think about whether you want to go to hell." And I remember going to George and I was like, how could you do this? Like, how could you plant this idea in my mind and I'm not even allowed to do it, like I could condemn myself, this is southeastern Oklahoma where this theology is really prominent. And he sort of sat me down and basically did my first tour through the Wesley Quadrilateral and talked about how there's differences in interpretation and things like that. And that really helped a lot. But that was kind of hard to get over there initially. But thankfully, I met people along the way who really encouraged me. My congregation in Ada was always really supportive, and so yeah, I think for the most part, it was well received with a few notable exceptions. But I soon put those behind me and really leaned into how Methodists interpret Scripture. So.
I wow, I mean, I can't believe it, but that's awful that somebody would tell you that. I'm speechless. Anyway, it's just oh well, I guess as you said, there's some sort of branch in our brothers and sisters who is prevalent that theology.
Hmm. Yeah.
All right, so then speaking kind of to congregations that you may not be in there yet, but that just in congregations in the annual conference, what is your word of wisdom as they welcome uh, women pastors into their leadership? So, what are your pearls of wisdom that you want to tell them?
I've actually had a pretty easy time of it because I think most of the places well, actually all the places I have served have had female clergy prior to my being appointed there. But there are still some things that have come up. And as I was thinking about this, I think the first thing is that titles really matter. Um, in one of my churches, and I was sort of very new to serving as clergy. I remember a man told me, and he was joking, right? But he said that I would have to earn my title as reverend, and that he would kind of be calling me Emily until he felt I had earned it. And women have received the same amount of education, the same amount of training as our male colleagues. And I just couldn't help but think that that would not have been said to me had I not been female. So I think that really matters. And, you could ask your pastor what they prefer to be called. And that's just, I think we all deserve the same amount of respect and dignity that we would afford our male counterparts. So, um, another thing I think is really think about what kind of touch is appropriate. Um, there is a difference in how we regard men's bodies versus women's bodies. And for some reason, women's bodies seem to be um, thought of as there's more ownership or more openness to touch when you're a woman. And that's just not necessarily true. I actually asked my husband last night, I was like, do you feel like people touch you inappropriately, like in your congregations or anything like that? And he's like, well, people have touched my hair before. And I thought that was weird. And I sat there and I thought, it would be nice if my only complaint was that people touched my hair. So I think get to know your pastor and get to know what forms of touch she is comfortable with. Some women don't like to hug. Um, Also, maybe never tickle your pastor. I just think that's weird, period. Um, a handshake is always safe for a pastor of any level of comfortability, or that's not even a word, but any level of comfort when it comes to touch. The other thing I think would be comment on substance and not appearance. I can't tell you how many times I have preached what I thought was a ballpark, like slam dunk, whatever the sports analogy is, sermon. And someone will come up to me afterwards and be like, I just love your shoes. And like, to be honest, yes, I have great shoes. I pride myself on my shoes. But um, if that's the only thing you took away from my sermon, I think there's an issue. I've had female colleagues say that people will come up and say, I would have loved to have gotten more out of your sermon, but I was very distracted by your legs in that skirt. Things like that. So substance, not appearance. Like there's just some things that aren't appropriate. And then I think one of the best gifts I've ever gotten in a congregation were men who considered themselves my ally, um, who would say the things that maybe I couldn't say in my defense. So I think one of the other things you can do is sort of be cognizant of situations your pastor is being put in, and say the thing, speak up. If you know that what's being said is inappropriate or unjust or whatever, like you carry more power by default in our culture than we do. And then you also don't have to juggle this thought process of like, am I going to get pushback for defending myself? Is this going to stir up some kind of political drama within the church because of who this person is and how much money they give or whatever? So say the things that we can't and be in our corner because they come up more often than you would think. And it's just nice to have somebody who's willing to say that, whatever that happens to be.
Thank you. Yes, and I agree completely with you because I have on the me more on the being brown and immigrant and sometimes I cannot say or trying to be polite and everything, but somebody else in the congregation would say the things that you said that I cannot say, but they
Yeah.
kind of say, I'm going to talk to that person. I can think one in particular when about the whole immigration thing and oh, they were so nice to me that they defended me. So anyway, I got it
Yeah.
completely. I totally agree with that. And I cannot believe that somebody would have tell somebody about their legs. I mean, that is so be I'm speechless again. It just floors me.
Yeah, I think, and I even had conversations with male colleagues in seminary. I have a friend, dear friend, Anglican priest, and we actually had probably a whole semester where I basically taught like feminist 101, because he just was like, I just feminists just seem like people who hate men. And I was like, that's really not the case. And let me tell you why. And, I had experiences in seminary where I would sort of explain, like, I was in class and I had my hand up, and my professor called on five white males before me. And we have to notice that stuff and be willing to call it out and, make people uncomfortable. I think we're sort of, as church people, we want to be polite all the time. And I think that's sometimes to the detriment of others. And I think we actually, by being silent, cause harm. And that's not what we're supposed to be about as a Wesleyan people.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. We need to stop those in the tracks, and it is not easy, but we need to be done. It needs to be done. Particularly, can remember recently I heard a colleague something um, was said to somebody else, another female, and that person out of they said it's not my nature or anything, but said you don't say that, and you apologize right now. And I know that it was kind of a you know, a moment of courage. But then when she started to think about it, she said, "Well, I never done that before." So it was kind of says the spirit moved on me. So anyway, I just
Yeah.
need to speak up.
And I think the other half of that too is to realize that you may be the person who receives that correction and to try to receive it in grace instead of being defensive. That's something I've been working on is saying, like, you know what, you're right. And what I said was insensitive, or I didn't know that. And I promise that I'm going to try to do better. Um, because I think what people don't want to hear is excuses for your behavior, or, oh, that's just how I was raised or whatever. Well, here's the thing. You're an adult and you can educate yourself. And part of being an adult is listening to other people and other perspectives and being challenged by them. Um, and not to just stay stuck in how we were raised and think that it's okay to continue to hurt other people because we're unwilling to grow. So,
Yes, that is not a good excuse or excuse at all. I agree with you. I think that we don't need to be giving excuses. Just say, hey, I'm sorry and I didn't know and I'm going to do my best to not do that again. So anyway, yeah, thank you for
sure.
that. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. So, how can we, in as a conference, in what I understand conference, it is, from the local church to district level and then conference level, all those three levels. How can we do better in to foster and care for women in ministry?
I think this almost kind of connects to the previous question. I think specifically to my male colleagues at every sort of level in the conference, but maybe particularly at the local church level. We have a lot of rural churches in Oklahoma, and sometimes people in rural places hold very traditional patriarchal values. And what, and this stretches actually from not just how women are received, but how people of color are received in those communities. Basically, if you have a month where you have to be celebrated apart from the larger society, this probably applies to those groups. Is like we don't want to be the first person to have all of those conversations with people. It's exhausting, and we need men to step up and to pave the way. I mean, it could be that in a lot of places they've still not ever received a female pastor. And to if you're the first woman there to be fighting the battle of even being accepted as the leader of the flock, it's detrimental to the kind of ministry that we could do and how effective we can be. So we need male pastors to be teaching on accepting women of why it's perfectly biblical for women to lead congregations and to be called into ministry. They should be preaching on it. You're not unqualified. You have the education. Um, Welcome female pastors into your pulpit and do it regularly and not just in March. Um, we're available all months of the year, it turns out. And lead your committees to update your policies for family and maternity leave for your staff. Um, it shouldn't take a woman who's had a baby coming in and saying, well, why can't the education director take 6 to 8 weeks off after she has a baby? And then, of course, encourage male and female leadership at all levels of the church. Um, don't relegate women to children's ministry or being the pianist or whatever. We are called and equipped for all roles in the church. And I don't mean any of that to be snarky or whatever. It's just it's a trend we still see. So I think it takes all of us to sort of change a culture, and it does, and culture changes slowly, but I think it's a responsibility to every person in this conference and across our country to be willing to make space for women and to have those conversations so that that we're not having to do battle when we're appointed to a church. It's not fair. We don't have the same sort of default authority that men do in our culture. So if you want to be a real ally to women and to all the people with special months in the year, you have to be willing to have those conversations and prep people for us. That's going to make a huge difference. So you can do that at the local church level, at the district level, at the conference level, etc.
Yeah, something that's resonating with me when you were saying all this is something that when I came to the States, soon after, I was being introduced as Carlos, the Hispanic pastor. And I said, hold it. I'm not going around saying, well, Joe, the Anglo white pastor, right? Or
Joe the
it's just
white guy,
Joe, right? You're the white guy, yeah.
stock
So
white man.
that's right. So I'm saying I'm just Carlos and I'm just the pastor and that's it. And I want to be, perceived and understood as that. So I'm kind of,
Mhm.
this, but you may remind me of this as well. So all the things
It's
that we
funny
need to go through.
you announce a woman or a person who's Hispanic or Black is coming to a congregation, and it's people are like, oh, it's like receiving an alien. It's like, actually, no. I don't know if you remember those commercials. It was like it was commercials about being a Mormon or whatever, and they were like, I skateboard and I'm a Mormon, and it's like you don't have to explain that you're a human being like the rest of us. And like you shouldn't have to explain that I'm just a pastor, like any other pastor you've ever received. I just happen to be female, or I happen to be Hispanic, or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, I don't like that the whole thing as well. Here's, like Wendy, the female pastor. I mean, she's obvious she's female, or Emily. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you. So
Yeah.
anyway, I agree with you. All right, so kind of wrapping it up. Thank you again. But this last question, Mia, there will be other women considering going into ministry. So what would you tell them? What would you tell them if they are considering going to ministry? And not necessarily only ordained ministry, but also just ministry in the local church as a layperson. So what would you tell them? To encourage them and to tell them what's up.
I think early on, what I really struggled with was conceiving myself in this role. I grew up in a place where I had never seen a woman preach. I had never had a female pastor. I'm pretty sure there were no female pastors in Ada. Um, so I had a really hard time even like envisioning myself embodying this role. And it took going to college and meeting Reverend Dr. Leslie Long for that to really um, make a difference in being able to see myself in this role. And like I also happen to be not sort of like your stock pastor in like attitude and like I have a really I have an upbringing that maybe a lot of pastors haven't had and so it was like I don't even know if I'm like qualified, not just qualified in that have I read the Bible, do I love Jesus way, but am I allowed to be who I uniquely am in this role, or do I have to sort of change who I am to fit some preconceived notion of what a clergy person is supposed to look like? So I needed some permission to just like be who I am, um, and to do it my way, to not feel like I had to sort of push myself into some box that I don't fit in. Um, so the only reason I ever even decided to go forward with the ordination process is I decided that I was going to be unapologetically myself because that's who God called. Um, and that if people didn't like it, then that's okay. um, you're not for everyone, right? And each of us comes to ministry with a different background and different experiences and different passions. And that's what we need. That reflects the diversity of the image of God in each of us. And, I think we get the fullest picture of who God is when we see all of the different people that represent our God. Um, so I think that's probably my biggest advice is do it your way, and then find the people who are going to encourage and support you, because I would have not ended up in this role if I had not found the right people who were there at the right time to not just encourage me, but to speak truth. And I can remember being in college, and Dr. Long was my campus minister, and we spent hours going through the Purple Book. If anybody remember, do they still even do the Purple Book? No. Man, I can't believe that. I feel like that should just be a rite of passage. Purple Book and then Teal Book. So I did those. And we did the Purple Book together. And I didn't want to itinerate. I was like, I don't want to be an elder. I just don't think I'm called to that. And Leslie Long looked at me and she said, cut the crap. Like you would be a fine deacon, but like your gifts are really to be an elder. And you've got to stop denying that just because you don't like this one part of it. And when I finally did embrace that, everything sort of fell into place. So you don't need people who are just gonna be yes people or whatever, but who are gonna help you to see yourself fully, um, and challenge you to live into that calling. So I think those are my two words of advice. And it's hard because like you're a young person, you're like, I don't even know how to do this. How do I become a clergy person in the United Methodist Church? Um, I think I can say with confidence that any woman, and then I'm sure men, most of the men in this conference, if a young woman comes to them and says, like, I'm feeling called to ministry, they're going to be so excited and want to help you figure out what that means for you and what that looks like. So don't be afraid to reach out for help, because you literally cannot do this alone.
Well, and yes, and the good thing is that we have other um, clergy who have gone ahead. So, if I'm talking now to the audience, if you are considering this, please go to the TU Wesley Foundation and you will find Emily, and you can give you the pearls of wisdom as well. But there is many other as well that you can see from everybody, as you said, Dr. Long and many other wonderful pastors, colleagues who can guide you in whatever path you think you are going, if it's ordained and it's elder or deacon, or in your local church and as a lay person. We have many wonderful leaders who are responding to the call as a lay person. So anyway, I'm just thank you for that. Thank you for saying be you and apologetically you and find wisdom and guidance. So that's great, great words. Thank you.
Yeah,
Well,
my
I know
pleasure.
that we will love to hear more from you, and we will hear more from you. And I promise that we will invite you back again, not on a March thing, but just to hear what's going on with everything else with you and your family and your ministry. But thank you again for saying yes today, and please keep warm. And
Yeah,
is
you
it?
too.
I know. Any final words to the good people of Oklahoma? If nothing, that's fine. But if you want to say anything else,
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. We need more women in ministry. I'm the chair of the Commission on the Status and Role of Women, as most people know. And our thing is numbers. And on average, there's only 32% of women in the church who are serving as clergy. And we make up almost 60% of its membership across the nation. So I think there's some work to do. And I think we're fully capable of engaging in that work. And I think if we all take seriously our individual roles in changing that and making sure that women are encouraged and affirmed in their callings, I think we'll start to see numbers that actually reflect our membership because women are just as called to this work as men are. So
yes, I agree. Yeah, and that is a very indicting number that you just gave. So thank you for that. Well, this was a circle update, and we'll see you soon. Have a good day. Bye bye.
you too. Thanks, Carlos.
Hello, you guys. I'm Carlos, and I'm here today with my good friend, Reverend Nancy Hamilton. And you know her. She's been in the ministry for a long time, so she will tell everything about what she's doing and what she has done, and going into the nitty-gritty of our conversation. However, I just want to stop real quick to I invite you to like us or subscribe us if you're watching this on YouTube. Just as I said, subscribe, like us, so that each time that we come in with a new episode, you are right on there and watch it. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify as an audio podcast, please also subscribe, like us, and share with everybody so that this podcast and also what Nancy is doing in her testimony and everything that we're going to have a conversation with everybody, more people can know about it. So please do so. Anyway, Nancy, thank you for having the opportunity for us to hear from you. And I know that many people know you, but just in case, would you mind introducing yourself to the Oklahomania Conference again? I know that they know you, but just in case.
Sure. Thank you for having me. So, as Carlos said, I'm Reverend Nancy Hamilton. I'm a deacon in the conference, and I am appointed to the conference office. So my official title is a little long, but I'm the Associate Director of Connectional Ministry for Leadership, and then I've got a little slash. Um, Executive Secretary to the Board of Ordained Ministry. And so, in a nutshell, what I do is I help people through the process of licensed and ordained ministry within the Oklahoma Conference. And so I work with individuals, I work with local churches, I work with DCOMS, our District Committee of Ministry, um, and then I also work with the board. So our Board of Ordained Ministry um, works with all kinds status changes with our clergy, and then those who are going forward for commissioning and on to ordination. We interview those people, and so we work as a board with that. And so there's a lot there, but that's my elevator speech of what I do.
And you do a lot, so I can attest that her desk is always uh, is an organized chaos, meaning that there is a lot of paper because there is always something going on that she needs to address. So if you ever visit her, she's always doing something that needs to be done almost like instantly.
Well, I'm a notebook person, and so I like to have my notebooks. And so any status changes of appointment that happen throughout the year, I keep track of all those. Um, and so um, for our clergy, we have a clergy executive session every year, right, at the beginning of annual conference, and we vote on things. And so that's called the business of annual conference. And so I keep track of all that. So it helps me to have those notebooks. And so that was probably way more information than anybody needed. But this is my world. This is what I do.
No, it is needed, and I'm glad that you're going in the lens because the times are like, well, what do you do exactly? So there you go. That is
Yes.
in a nutshell what Nancy does. But here to discuss. I mean, I know that your world revolves around the Board of Ordained Ministry, particularly, and
Yes.
broadly calling and the feeling of calling of somebody, and you shepherd him or her through all the process, right? But today we want to talk to you about your experience as a clergy person in the annual conference and as a woman. We during March we're celebrating and highlighting the uh, Women's History Month, and I know it is not tokenism. We're trying to have an array of experiences from young clergy to more experienced clergy and everything in between. So with that's what we have in mind. So with that, all of this preamble, kind of saying more information that we need. How was your call to ministry received when you said, I think I have a call to ministry received by your family, by your friends, by your local congregation? How was that?
I was very blessed to be very well supported. So I believe my call started when I was in junior high. Now that's going to show my age because I attended junior high, not middle school. But as Carlos said at the very beginning, I've been in ministry a long time. But I had um that nudging, but it wasn't until college that I answered that call. And I went to Southwestern Oklahoma State University in Weatherford. Go Bulldogs. um Wanting to be an elementary school teacher, but God got a hold of me, along with Greg Tiener, who was my campus minister, and and I was able to become an intern, and so my call really developed there. And I would say before that, my I changed majors a couple times, and I wasn't quite sure. I knew something wasn't right. And my dad says that when I came to him and said, Dad, I am going into ministry, I feel like this is where God has called me. He said he's never seen me more determined and more sure of myself. And so he was very supportive along with my mom. I grew up in the church. I attended St. Mark's in Bethany, and they were very supportive. I met with the SPRC and their charge conference, and then I continued to meet with my charge conference while I was in seminary, and so they were very very supportive, and my friends as well. So in that I was very blessed with that.
Well, good to know. Good to know that you have that support and that you were well received on your calling experience in that. Now, speaking directly to congregations, what is your word of wisdom? As I said earlier in another interview, your pearls of wisdom to local congregations as they welcome women pastors in as leaders in in the local congregation.
I think I would say be open and don't treat a female different than you would a male. Ask them the same questions. Um because a lot of times there's a difference of how um men and women are viewed in ministry. But we have the same calling, and therefore we should be supported, and ask the same questions. And so when we're preparing our board members for interviews, one of the things that we say is, if you're going to ask a question, be sure you would ask it to the males and the females, both. I think that's really important.
So treat them, as you say, equally, and do not think that, I don't know, differently in that sense, right? That
Sure, because a lot of times women get asked about families. Well, what about your family in ministry? Well, as in ministry, men also have families, and so it's not one or the other that's going to focus on that. And so I just think that's a good thing to remember.
all right, great. All right, so you have a vantage point that many others in our conference do not have. And what do I mean by that? It is that you have experience leadership from in the local congregation, in the local mission field. You have also led and experienced leadership in the district level and now at the conference level, right? So in all those three levels, when I said conference, I mean all those three: uh, local church, district, conference. How can we, as a conference, in all these three tiers, foster and care for women in ministry? How can we do that well, and if we need to be improved, do it better?
I think just realizing how far we've come. And so I have been in ministry now for over 20 years, and as in those years, I've seen more and more women in leadership positions. And as I've gone to one of the things I get to do is fill in for clergy who are maybe sick or need to go on vacation. And so I'll go to other churches, and there have been probably a handful of times that somebody has said, well, I didn't realize a woman could be a minister, because that's not something that I grew up with. And so just to know that that's changed, but we still have some resistance. And so I think as a congregation that's nurturing a woman's call to ministry, is to know that there are obstacles that they're going to face. And even though we're striving to be seen the same, there are still differences on how people interact with us. And I think just acknowledging that is a great way to support. Excuse me.
Good. Is there specific ways that you think that like that plays out that you can, if in your own experience, on how to treat or foster uh, leadership, women in leadership? Do you recall, or it's okay if you say no? There's
Ways
nothing I
that
can
I
say.
have been that's been fostered in me. I'm sorry.
Yes, 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 or that you can see that this is an area that needs to be improved.
Um, I think we have made great strides, but I always think we can do better. I think for Oklahoma, we have Bishop Laura Merrill, and so it's kind of a new day um, for us, and so just continuing to encourage and support, and like I said, acknowledging that there are some barriers, but continuing to support them through it and not minimizing an experience. And so one of the things I remember is so a little backstory. When I answered my call to ministry, I made a little deal with God. Now, I don't recommend doing that. It normally doesn't turn out great, but it worked for me for a little bit. I was like, okay, I will do that, but I don't want to preach. For me, being a deacon, I could teach. I wanted to help nurture people in in their discipleship, in their relationship with Jesus. But the pulpit was a little scary for me. But as my ministry, as my career in my ministry continued, I did find myself in the pulpit, and actually, I love now preaching. But somebody came up to me after a sermon and said, "You do preach good for a girl." Um, and so I think and then when I commented on that, they said, "Oh, it's just a joke. We're just kidding." Well, I don't know that it really was. And I said, "Well, I think I preach good for anybody." Um, so there are those moments, and just to be aware of that.
Yeah, I can relate to some of those comments as well. That I'm not going into that, but as a immigrant brown person, yeah, I can also receive those type of similar well, not similar, but uh, related to comments, I guess, cousins comments, if you will. All right, so to kind of wrap it up and to just kind of once again, thank you for being here. So, what would you say to women? And again, your role is that of nurturing, but what would you say to women that today are feeling called to be in ministry, either lay or ordained? What is your words of wisdom for them as they contemplate answering their calling?
I think exploring that call is really important. You and I have we talked, I think several months ago. I lost track of time just about calling. But one of the things that I really try to encourage people to do is there's a discernment process and there's an exploration process. So find a Bible study to lead, or if there's a Sunday that your pastor is going to be out, is there an opportunity maybe for you to preach? Leading a mission trip. There's all we're all called to something within the body. We all have our gifts within the body of Christ, and we're all called to build the kingdom. But that looks different for everybody. And I think knowing exactly where you're called um is the greatest is the word is escaping me. Just it's a just to verify and confirm your call, and just knowing that. And so get out there and just try different things. When I was in college, I was a youth director. I was a youth director in Hammond. I drove 30 miles, to Hammond, Oklahoma from Weatherford. I was in and I loved it. I loved it. And so, just having those different experiences will help um, make bring clarity to your call. And so that's what I would um, suggest to somebody who, really anybody, but for a woman who's being called into ministry, find female clergy, ask them questions. Um, we're in this together, and there are those of us who have been in. I don't want the word game came to mind, but we've been in this a long time, and so we're here to support and encourage and help navigate those waters.
Well, thank you again for saying yes to this time, and I'm hope, and I know that many people, if they feel the calling and may know that they can reach out to Nancy Hamilton, call the conference office, or just email you, and you will be happy to guide them or tell your story or the experience and point them to the right direction. So thank you for doing that, and for everybody else, thank you for tuning in, and see you next time. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank